Hello everyone. Hello everyone. This is the Green Hunter and welcome to the 10th part of my Bible audiobook series. We're going for Genesis 11 and this is the origin of languages and cultures. All people on the earth had one language and the same words. When they traveled east, they found a valley in the land of Shahar and settled there. They said to each other, "Come, let us make bricks and bake them hard." They used bricks for stones and aspith for mortar. They said, "Come, let us build for ourselves a city and a tower, and its its top in the sky, and let us make a name for ourselves, so that no one so so that we won't disappear over all the earth." So what they're basically doing is this is setting up to be the story of the Tower of Babel and or Babel. And these are basically humans just like us when we get centered on, how am I going to be remembered? I fall into this trap sometimes. And so they're trying to make a city and a tower that will be a monument for future generations. But let's just see how God reacts to this. Because in itself it isn't evil. But because of what God says, it is evil because they're not doing exactly what he needs them to do, so that future generations will be set up like they do. This is all part of his plan. When the Lord came down, so this is at a time when God Himself came down to the earth. When the Lord came down to see the city and the tower that the humans built, and the Lord said, "There is now one people, and they all have one language. This is what they begun to do, and now they will plan to do with I'm sorry. And now all that they plan to do will be possible for them. Come, I want to highlight that word let's go down and mix up their language so they won't understand each other." Now, God is talking to the the Trin, God is talking to Jesus. The way the Trinity is set up is that you have God, and when Jesus was made, He split Himself into two, God the Father and Jesus, and then Jesus split Himself and created the Holy Spirit, which is just His presence. And so, even though Jesus doesn't exist in this point in time, He is still a part, an essence part. And so, strangely enough, God is talking to Himself in that moment in time. So, let's go down and mix up. Hold on, I have to close this. This is distracting me. Let's go down and mix up their language so they won't understand each other. Then the Lord disappeared, dissipated them from there to all of the earth, and stopped building, and they stopped building the city. Because if you can't understand someone, work on this scale was to stop. That doesn't mean people can't communicate, but it takes an awful lot more work than than just playing when you're kids. So of course people are gonna group up with other people they can understand. And you're like, well, doesn't God want us to all be together and all get along? Of course He does. But God said, go forth and be multiplied over the whole earth, meaning not just in one spot, and that's what they were doing. You could have argued, well, just destroy the building, but they were dead set on building that building right there. You know, so He's like, what I do? I know, I'll just separate them up into groups myself. Therefore, it is called Babel or Babel, depending on your dialect, because there the Lord mixed up the languages of all the earth, and from there the Lord dissipated them all over the earth. Now, this is Shem's descendants. We've already heard Ham's, Ham and Ram's descendants, but we haven't heard Shem's descendants. So, these are Shem's descendants, and remember, Shem is one of Noah's sons. When Shem was 100 years old, now get this, he became a father of Asperah. Now, I don't know about you, but that is impressive. And you're like, well, that couldn't have happened. Well, there's two factors that would. When Abraham, which will come after Noah and all these descendants, his wife was very old, and yet because Abraham believed, he was able to conceive children with Sarah, his wife. So it is not possible. So there's still hope as long as it's in God's plan, which we don't know whether is in God's plan. Another thing is, according to the Jewish calendar, they only have 10 months. So it's like, it's like on our when we're considered five. Um, no, wait. When like, we're, yeah, when we're um considered five, they consider themselves six if they're going by the calendar. So it's almost like in intervals like that, like you're maybe 1 or 2 years older than the average person each. And like 5 years you go up, I think. So over time, you'd have drastic um age differences between the calendar today and the calendar if you were just following by the Jewish calendar. That's just how it was made. I mean, if you have a shorter calendar, people are gonna live longer just because they're not equating their age to the same one we are. We can thank the Romans for our calendar. Oh, the Romans, you sinful, heartless people a lot of times. When Asherev was 35 years old, he became the father of Sherel. Now that's more modern day fathering. After Sherel was born, I Apriashet lived 403 years. Now that is impressive. He had two sons. He had other sons and daughters. Notice they don't go for each name of the lineage. They just go over like the firstborn because that's how because that's how the inheritance worked. Sorry about that. The video cut out, so I'm just gonna have to put those two clips together. Mm. When Sherrill, what Sherrill, that's his name, was 30 years old, he became the father of Ebert. Eber. When Eber was born, Sherrill lived. After after Eber was born, he lived 403 years old. So you got basically a 438-year-old and a 433-year-old. So that's a 5-year difference. So I think it's starting to go down. When Eber was 34 years old, he became the father of Pele. Pe Pele. After Pele was born, he lived 430 years old. Well, there goes my theory. He actually lived to be 460. So, what else? What ebs? Um, when Peleg was 30 years old, he fathered Ryu. You see, you see the you see, it's all around the 30s. After Ryu was born, Pele lived 209 years old. He had other sons and daughters. Again, they only mention the firstborn because that's how the lineage is carried down, like the land and everything. Now, you had a significant drop in age here, with only 200 and 43, which is a significant drop. When Ryu was 30 years old, he became the father of Seirug. After Seirug was born, Ryu lived 207 years old. So that was um so that was 239 years old. He had other sons and daughters. When Seirug was 30 years old, he fathered Neror. After Neror was born, Seirug lived 200 years. So you see, all of a sudden, within a few generations, it was like cut in half, which is really weird. I mean, I know you have to distend your belief a little bit for these ages, but you gotta remember this was thousands and thousands of years ago, and so their diets were completely different, and the way they counted age was completely different, and all of a sudden there was like from over 400 years old um to now you're a little bit over, you're like not even halfway to 300, just a drop in over 100 years of age. When Naor was 29 years old, he became the father of Ture, of Tare. Tara? Tara. After Tara was born, Neril lived 119 years. He had other sons and daughters. Oh God. When Tare was 70 years old. Goodness gracious, what's with these people and their genetics? I mean, Man, I mean, how would you like it if your father was basically old enough to be your grandpa? That's for some weird family interactions. He was the father of Abram, I see, Abram, Nahor, and Haran. These are the descendants of, these are Teres, no, Terah's descendants. Terah became the father of Abram, Nahor, and Haran. Haran became the father of Lot. Now you may be asking yourself, well, Greenland Hunter, didn't you say they only mention the firstborn because that's how the inheritance go? Why are they mentioning the other sons? Great question. Knowledge. Great question. And paying attention, viewer. The fact is because these three brothers, okay, are important to the story. You'll see why and later, because Lot's a very important character. Haran died while his father Terah in his native with his father Terah in his native land in Ur of the Chaldeans. Abram and Noah both married. Abram's wife was was Sarah instead of Sarah, but it was Sarah, or at least that's how I'm pronouncing it. And Noah's wife was Milcash. No, Milcara. Milcara. The daughter of Haran's father of both Marika it is Kara. Sarah was unable to bear children. Note, I just now mentioned it up top of this part that Abram's wife could not bear children, but that'll come into play later in the story. Because Abram, of course, we always know in Christian and Jewish circles that Abraham is known as Father Abraham because his descendants credit Israel. Note, he did not his descendants aren't the creation of all the nations. That's more like Noah. But his descendants are in many nations and are made up of Israel, the ones that are born from the Jewish bloodline, not the people that convert to Judaism. Now, when Sarah was unable to bear children, Terah took his son Abram, his grandson Lot, son of Haran, and his sons, Abram's wife Sarai, his daughter-in-law. They left Uriah of the Canaanites in the land of Canaan, and after arriving at Haran, they settled there. Terah lived 205 years old, and he died in Haran. Okay, Lord, I pray that lots of people would enjoy this, that their eyes would have been opened by the knowledge that I was able to provide. Lord, I pray nobody got confused and everybody enjoyed it. And keep us safe. In Jesus' name I pray, and all those who agree with me said,